Carla Alejo. I am the director of Catholic Charities Hoarding Intervention Treatment Program and also in-home support program. I have been here at Catholic Charities for over 11 years now and have come from the world of long-term health care. And in that world, I have always come across people who were suffering from hoarding disorder. And I came across people in-home care, in group home care, nursing home care. Every time I was in a different situation working with seniors, I still came across hoarding disorder and never was able to come across anyone or any resource to help people out. So about 8 years ago, I started the Hoarding Intervention Treatment Program here because I always kind of had a knack with working with individuals with the disorder and making sure that I was able to follow through with them and have success. So I'm going to share with you guys what I have learned. Again, our hoarding intervention and treatment program started about 7 years ago. To my knowledge, this is the only program in the country that is available to the public and to anyone in the area. We currently serve about 100 people. And we do have waiting lists. We've had waiting lists since day one to help people. I'm going to go through what hoarding disorder is and some of the misconceptions. But the biggest misconception I always want to start off with is that people don't want help. People with hoarding disorder don't want help. They want to live like that. It's the biggest misconception that there is. All of the people who are waiting for our services and all those who are having our services, they all called us themselves looking for help. People want help, but when somebody has hoarding disorder, they feel like they are the only ones who have this disorder, and they want help from individuals who are knowledgeable and who are not going to dismiss the things that are happening, because there's so many intricate layers to hoarding disorder. So I am going to start with sharing a little PowerPoint that I have.
And we do see it. Thank you.
Good. So I titled the PowerPoint always Coping Chaos, because hoarding disorder, number one, is a coping mechanism. And that is the biggest takeaway to remember if you are an individual who suffers from hoarding disorder, or if you are a professional dealing with somebody who suffers from hoarding disorder, is that hoarding disorder is a coping mechanism. And what they're coping with is something that we will get into more detail. But what is hoarding disorder and what are the indicators? So the indicators of hoarding disorder, number one, easy enough, is that the person has an excessive amount of items that appear useless to most people. Number two, the rooms are significantly cluttered and prevents activities which the space was designed. Now, what that means is that you have a dining room. You could have a dining room table that's filled with stuff, and that you are now no longer eating in that dining room. Or some people have bedrooms that are filled with things and are not sleeping in those bedrooms. Or the living room or the kitchen. So if at least one room is not being utilized for what it was designed, then that's an indicator. Third one is that the person is feeling distress, despair because of the clutter. And when I talk to individuals, sometimes they say, oh, my stuff doesn't stress me out. It is my landlord or my daughter who is stressing me out. So I have to dig deeper with them so they can realize they're stressing you out, but the argument at hand or the stress is due to the clutter. So people will try to say that it's my stuff doesn't stress me out, but other things, but it's still indirectly, it is the clutter that is making that person feel overwhelmed. And the person's overwhelmed and embarrassed by the clutter. That is very important to keep in mind, because I will touch base quickly in a minute about another disorder that looks like hoarding disorder, but it is something different, which is called Diogenes syndrome. And with that disorder, the person does not have embarrassment, is not overwhelmed by the disorder or by the clutter. So we will touch base on that in a minute. And then the fifth indicator for hoarding disorder is that the individual's family and community are affected by the clutter. So
Carla?
When I sit down with an individual and we go over these indicators, I say if somebody has at least 3 of these indicators, it does indicate that they have hoarding disorder. So
can I stop you for just a second?
Yes.
It looks like we're just on that first slide. Is that the slide that you're wanting us to see?
It is a picture?
Yes, just where it says the coping chaos.
Oh, okay. Let me. Do you see this one?
Yep, now we're seeing it. Slide number 2.
Okay. Let me. Okay. So you guys now see the indicators that I just spoke about. Yeah. Sorry about that. And let's see if we can bring up the next one. Do you see a picture?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So this is usually what we think of when we are talking about hoarding disorder. A home that is packed with stuff, a lot of things that seem like garbage. But now that we have been working in this field for so long, we realize that this is not just hoarding disorder. This is also hoarding disorder. There are many levels of hoarding disorder, but it is all the same thing. It just happens to be the further along in the disorder and how many years you suffer from the disorder, then you have a greater chance of different types of situations. Lots of times the situation ends up being that there's so many items that you're in crisis and you end up becoming evicted, or you're having notices from landlords to get rid of items. But this is also hoarding disorder. And when I was talking about the indicators for the disorder, number one of those indicators that, that there's an excessive amount of items. You can see in this home, in this living room, that there is a lot of items, and the items are preventing the activity of the room. So the items are on the couch, which means now that person cannot utilize that living room. And the person that this picture is from is very embarrassed and did call us for help. So this person from this picture also suffers from hoarding disorder. So keep in mind that hoarding disorder looks like different in every home and is in different levels. So the leading misconceptions about hoarding disorder is number one that I always hear, and people think that if you have hoarding disorder, you must want to live like that. You are dirty, you're lazy, you don't clean up, and that that you could just clean this up and fix it yourself. That is the biggest misconception about hoarding disorder. Individuals with this disorder cannot do it by themselves because it is not about the stuff. Hoarding disorder is a mental health issue. So there are many facets, and most people with hoarding disorder have some kind of physical limitations along with mental health limitations. And with this combination, they are unable to undo the situation by themselves. Also, a lot of the people that we serve are very intelligent. In fact, a lot of the people we serve are directors, they are professors, they are teachers, they are pharmacists, they were owners of businesses at one point. So part of what goes into the disorder is that these people do suffer from OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder, which at one point in life has helped them through college and has helped them excel at their jobs. But unfortunately, that means they have focused on one thing in life and other things have gone to the wayside. And then that's when you start to get or see hoarding disorder. And what causes the disorder? Excuse me. There are lots of different elements that contribute to hoarding disorder. Sometimes it's genetics or learned behaviors. But most of the time, hoarding disorder is caused by trauma. And someone will suffer from trauma at some point in their life and may have bounced back. But at different points in life, they are then triggered. And these trigger times is when the person is trying to just survive. And when they're trying to survive, they're only focusing on certain things, which means other things go by the wayside, including taking out the trash, organizing, putting things away. So when you are in survival mode, you are only focusing on one thing, and that's surviving. So when someone has trauma and has not learned how to cope with their emotions and process those, then that's when you have hoarding disorder, and it gets re-triggered in life at different points. And just a tidbit about hoarding that most people don't realize is that it affects up to 7% of the population. That's what the statistics say. Now that I've been in this field for so many years, I can tell you that number is significantly higher. I would say at least 12% of people have some form or some level of hoarding disorder. Lots of times we are able to clear up that disorder because hoarding disorder is treatable, and unknown to us, sometimes we have been treated for our disorder and it clears up. but there are many people who it doesn't. And then that's when you see homes that are completely filled. Most people with hoarding disorder do have an income of less than $15,000 a year. That's what statistics say, but that's when they're at, when they're more of a senior and have gone through life. And usually hoarding disorder takes a toll on people's finances. They lose their jobs, they lose their businesses, they lose their savings. So towards the end of the disorder, you end up having many financial problems. And another problem that most people with hoarding disorder do end up having is becoming evicted or homeless at some point. Unfortunately, we get a lot of calls every day of people who are about to be evicted. And these are wonderful people, sweet people who have done nothing to anyone else in life, but they cannot seem to keep their homes clean. And I have landlords who don't want to evict people, but their homes are unsafe for them, for the individuals and for their neighbors. So I know I touched base quickly about Diogenes syndrome. So Diogenes syndrome is, will look like hoarding disorder, but it is different. Diogenes syndrome is when someone lives in squalor and there is a dementia component where the person is completely unaware that they're living in an unsafe living environment. Unlike hoarding disorder, people with hoarding disorder understand and know that their homes are not safe and not clean, but they just do not know how to fix the situation. And again, that's why those individuals call us for services and are looking for help. When someone has Diogenes syndrome, there is a very different disconnect to where they are very unaware that they are in a squalor situation. How I can tell if someone has Diogenes or hoarding disorder is when I go to the front door of an individual and they don't want me to come in, that shows me that they're embarrassed because they are aware that their home is cluttered. If I have an individual who just opens up the door and I walk in on top of a foot of garbage and there's rotting food and the individual's eating rotting food, then that's more of a flag that this person is suffering from Diogenes syndrome. It's important to note that for us at Catholic Charities, because our treatment for hoarding disorder does not work for those who have Diogenes syndrome. So when we go out and assess individuals that have hoarding disorder, we realize that hoarding disorder, again, is not about the stuff. It affects individuals' wellness all around, and it affects their emotional well-being. It affects their physical well-being, their social, spiritual well-being, financial, and of course, their environment. And when treating or helping someone with hoarding disorder, you don't want to just focus on the stuff. You want to focus on all these wellness factors. And the more of these wellness factors that are addressed and are at a higher wellness level, then the more success an individual will have in treating their hoarding disorder. So, number one, individuals always have to seek and receive some kind of mental health help. That could be with a therapist, with a counselor, even if it is a close friend or family who is willing to sit and talk with the individual on the traumas that they've had in their life. But this does need to be addressed if there's going to be any success, because if you take a home that's cluttered up and take all the stuff out, it will not change the individual's thought process. That home will return to being cluttered before you know it, because that person's way of coping with hard times in life is by holding on to things. And if that is not addressed, they will always do that. One reason why they can't address on their own their clutter also is because of physical limitations. Because the individuals are usually in a survival mode, they do not take care of themselves physically. So if you're helping someone, again, you have to make sure that they're taking care of themselves physically, that they're going to the doctor, they're following up on the bad knees and the bad shoulders, because that is going to be a barrier for them to be able to clean up and maintain in the future. Social and spiritual, I think we've all realized those with hoarding disorder end up isolating themselves. And the more you isolate, then the more depression holds on. And that is not good for their coping mechanisms either. So trying to get individuals connected with social groups, reconnecting with family and friends is very important, because the process of decluttering a home is very stressful. It's not just stressful for the individual, but it's stressful for those who are helping. So it is very important to have some support socially and spiritually. Again, I had mentioned that most individuals with hoarding disorder do have financial issues. So those usually need someone who has patience to sit and weed through bills, taxes, paperwork to get that cleared up. I've had many individuals that we've helped have been, they've been part of some type of financial abuse where they've had their money stolen in so many different ways or redirected. So individuals usually need help to kind of get those finances back on track. And of course, last but not least, individuals need help with their environment and making sense of the clutter and organizing it to which is most helpful for the individual. The way I clean my home is and have my home is always going to be different than the neighbors. So keep that in mind if you are going to be helping someone, is that the way that that home is set up, it may need to be decluttered, but the setup is going to be different than what your home is. And homes do not have to be completely clean and spotless. It can have a amount of clutter, but if that is being maintained, then that is ultimately what we are looking for the success of our clients. So I believe I've been talking for a while. Let me show my face again. I believe that we'll be having questions coming up because I love questions. With the next webinar, we'll be getting more in detail about the actual treatment and more tips and tools of how to help someone. And since there are so many people who do have hoarding disorder in so many levels, that we are willing to share all the information that we have. And I like to hear any questions anyone has.
Are there any questions for Carla? And as she said, the next session will be more on intervention and those tools to help with those types of strategies. It looks like Dale has a question in the chat. What do you estimate the success rate is following your intervention?
For our intervention, our success rate is, it ranges usually between 60 and 75%. If the person has completely finished our programs, the time length of that is different for individuals depending on their overriding diagnoses. So someone who is suffering from more of depression will clear up a lot quicker. Those who suffer from more of anxieties and OCD issues take a longer time because there's different beliefs that go into that, and usually a lot more traumatic issues in their past that needs to be resolved and different coping mechanisms to be instilled. And that comes with routine and time. We all know it takes quite a long time to learn a new routine and really ingrain it into our daily behaviors. So the longer someone is with our program, then the more success we have.
So Carla, I had a question from Kelsey Hansen. What areas do you serve?
We serve Milwaukee and Waukesha County. Most of our clients right now is in Milwaukee County. But Waukesha County too, we also have clients. Our team isn't that large, not just anyone can do this, but yeah, those are the two areas that we serve. I train other agencies across the country every month on how to do this. So I'm hoping at some point across this state, across the country, that there'll be more agencies that will do this because we definitely can't do it all alone.
Okay. Matthew had a question. Do you have suggestions for a client who does not see hoarding as an issue and is unwilling to seek assistance?
So to me, that sounds like someone who is extremely defensive. If they are aware, we have to make sure that they're aware that they have hoarding disorder. A lot of times it's about how you present it to an individual. Usually when I sit down with the indicators and read them off, then I have the client tell me if they meet those indicators. And usually they are very open about that. They will say, I guess I have this, I guess I do that, then I guess I do have hoarding disorder. It's all about the stigma. And if an individual is really diehard on not having that stigma of the title of hoarding disorder, it's just going to take some different attempts. But again, they're usually denying that because they don't understand it. So when I first go to clients, I explain what hoarding disorder is. I give them the indicators. And then most of the times our clients come to us with some kind of pressure source. And when there's a pressure source, that kind of opens up their minds to different approaches.
All right, thank you. So Kelsey has another question. Do you do actual physical cleanup with the individual to get rid of the items to avoid losing their housing due to ordinance violations?
Yep. Our program utilizes 3 parts. First of all, we make sure our clients are seeing a therapist, whether that be a therapist with Catholic Charities or somebody's choice of therapist. 2, they get a home coach, and that home coach is the person who is doing hands-on work with that individual. So we are cleaning along the side of them. We are not clearing them out or doing it alone, because people have to not want to have to do it again. They have to have skin in the game. And even if they have physical limitations, they can sit down and have a box in front of them. And we go through things one at a time. And so we do the cleaning along the side of them. And then 3, they get a case manager. And that's to address all those wellness factors.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, I am seeing no questions in chat. No one is unmuting. So thank you, Carla. And our next, yes, this is very interesting to me. I actually have a family member with a little bit of a hoarding issue. So I'm a very, if I don't use it, it gets tossed out type person. So yeah, this has been really, really educational and interesting for me. Carlene, can I ask for some feedback? Feedback regarding, and Carlene, feel free to unmute if you'd like to expand on your question.
Yep, actually, I did just unmute. Carla, I don't know if you remember me, but I spoke with you several months back. I'm the social worker from the La Crosse County Health Department. And yes. I had attended a training, an all-day webinar training with someone else. And then I touched base with you asking about the program that you had. So I just wanted to unmute and just say thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. And this has been just a very surface level compared to what we talked about. So I hope to attend the next one and hear a little bit more. But we don't have the program that you have, so I'm advocating for that. I have approached many therapists in the area, and I find that people are just very afraid to say, yes, you can tell people that they can refer here, because they just feel like they can't help them. They're so overwhelmed and underprepared and lack the training for that. And I'm a social worker. I don't have those extra years of education. I don't have a team, but I feel like just listening goes a long way. So I've worked with a lot of different cases, and I'm paired with sanitarians. So like when we go out, they could be condemned. It's a pretty scary situation. And sometimes they have to be. It's not safe. And like you talked about, using their spaces as they should be, so like if their bathtub is full of items and they can't take a shower, or their water doesn't work, if their couch is full of stuff, if they can't walk through their home safely, all those things. So I just have so many different scenarios running through my head. And some people are tricky. Like you think you're getting somewhere with them. And I actually have dedicated like 40 hours to one person when I was brand new to this position, and I didn't have all the obligations that I do right now. But it's hard. And with them, I tried to do more side by side. Fast forward a year later, they didn't maintain because they didn't take the suggestions that I gave them. And they got a 5-day notice. So it's so tricky. But I do have one right now. He's an elderly gentleman in his 70s in an upstairs apartment. And it's so much, like we're worried that it could cause structural damage. Didn't see a problem, and it is so clean. Like the only thing that was Diogenes type was some potatoes that were rotten. Like everything else was so well categorized and like all the stereo, like 15 stereos are stacked on one another, and they're all here, and all the pens are neatly categorized, and they're all here, and all his books, and so on and so forth. So like there wasn't an issue. He didn't see any problems. But when we started talking about, you know, what our fears and our challenges were coming from the health department, safety, and the landlord and their concerns, which are the same but also different than what ours are, he said, oh, I'll move it into a storage unit. So then we start to explore that. He has 4 storage units. So like this is a tough one. And I'm just wondering if you have any suggestions for me on something like that. I mean, right now we're focused on the home, but they don't see an issue. So I don't know where to go with this one.
So like we're talking about hoarding intervention, right? And treatment. Yep. So we have to think of it as, what if he is a drug addict? How would we approach the situation? Sometimes it takes a lot more drastic measures. Like you mentioned, sometimes it's not, people are not willing, right? When you're in the midst of a coping mechanism of some type of addiction, you are sometimes like there has to be a different type of intervention. But that's what I really call upon everyone else out there to put their thinking caps on how to do this, because it takes a lot of different policy change to be able to go in and to someone who is sane. You know, they can tell you what day it is, their name. You can't chapter them, but there should be a different type of approach that we can take to get people to go into an intervention type of a treatment. But when there isn't any around, it is so hard when these, again, are such good people and they don't deserve to live like this, but they need to make a big change. It's not like we can go and cancel off like someone's storage units and get rid of them. But sometimes a stay outside of their home helps, so they can actually see a different environment. So, so if this person were to end up in the hospital, it's many times it's catching an individual at the right moment. He does, you know, obviously if it's clean stuff and categorized, he's suffering from a lot of OCD behaviors. And so it would be looking up different approaches with someone's beliefs behind their OCD. You have to kind of work along those beliefs to get somewhere. And you have to figure out what motivates that person to want to change and to open up their eyes. Unfortunately, when we're working more with seniors and so much more stuff, it is harder because they've had so many more years of this. And so it's so ingrained in their daily routines and behaviors that they will deny it all day because they're not, in their mind, they're not doing anything wrong. So I would suggest sitting back and really trying to think of it from his perspective. That way it'll help you try to find a loophole in that thought process. Again, it is truly outthinking the thinker. And that's what I do with our clients. They are the most ingenious people. And I have to sometimes have someone else to help intervene, a family member or a doctor, someone that individual actually may listen to for a second and start to throw some seeds of people can help and you can trust them. So with his OCD, probably doesn't have any trust to have anyone help him to make decisions. That's usually what happens with the OCD behavior. So, so that's the suggestions I would have for now. Those are the harder situations when they've have so much in so many years. Unless crisis, sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to be able to build up. And if that means him losing housing or storage, in my mind, there should be some different type of, I would say, loophole in the system where those who are being evicted due to hoarding disorder, then I know it's so hard for them to get housing again. But sometimes you just have to go through that process for them to open up their mind to a different way of living. But unfortunately, it comes with then the title of you've been evicted. And but I'm working with in Milwaukee County with Legal Aid Society and some judges about that if somebody doesn't want to be evicted, they have to follow along with the program and they have to be receiving mental health help. So again, that's part of the whole process. This is there's no easy fix, but we got to start working from the bottom up on changing policies and how we address individuals with hoarding disorder.
All right. Yeah, excellent discussion. I'm just have these visions in my head of hundreds of organized pens and heavy pieces of things like record players and television. So thanks, Carlene. Anyone else? Again, the next webinar, we're going to talk more about interventions, is going to be August 9th. Any other feedback, questions, comments?
Just piggybacking off of what Carlene was saying, I work in Monroe County next to La Crosse County. We have very similar issues. So if La Crosse County ends up doing a program, we would love to be a part of that because we do have individuals that suffer as well. Working with a client now, very dense hoard, elderly gentleman, very little, if any, social support. There's physical limitations, health issues. Of course, it's a safety issue. And, you know, it's to a point where we either need to, we really probably should condemn it. But of course, you know, that's not the best option either because, you know, now we've got somebody who's homeless. So it's a really, really tough thing. And in the Western region here, we don't really have resources. So.
Yeah, there's really no resources across the country. Yeah, I get calls from, today it was from, I answered this morning from Texas, California, and Hawaii. Last week I've had Canada, I've had Switzerland. I have people calling from other countries because this is not just something that happens in this country. It happens across all economics, all everywhere across the world. Even those who are poor end up holding on to just the strangest items. I've had a group of therapists from Africa, from different countries in Africa, and they've also have come across this. So the biggest problem is finding people who can work with individuals, because we're coming up with treatments and there are, you know, promising interventions and things that we do. It comes down to finding groups of individuals who's willing to work in this field.
Yeah, exactly. So it looks like Carlene did provide her email address. I'm also going to tell all of you folks, there's a fun little fact about Zoom, if you did not know. If you are ever interested in saving the chat, because sometimes people like to put information in there, like contact information. If you go down a chat, you're going to see next to the smiley face emoji more. If you click on that, it's going to pop up to save chat. You can then save that onto your computer so you have reference for that for future time. With that being said, we are almost at 9:20. This has been a fantastic discussion. Thank you so much, Carla. Again, the next session on hoarding is going to be August 9th. I hope to see you all back then. Otherwise, have a wonderful day, and thank you for all keeping us safe out there.